What's up, resistors, misfits, rebels, troublemakers, radicals? This is Jay Ponti, host of Turn Left, broadcast number 2. Tonight, we've got some serious ground to cover. We're going to have the author of Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. His name is Abdul El-Sayed. And we're going to check in on our Stop the Camps campaign. Yes, we're talking about actual internment camps under ICE where people are being detained. And it is going to be important that we speak up. So we're going to hear from activists mobilizing clergy to bear moral witness at these facilities. We're going to talk about how corporations are basically behind all of this. It's a big cash grab. Because at Turn Left, we are here for working class people, for our immigrants, for humanity, and for our democracy. Before we get to our guests, we want to go through a few things that are happening. Right now, the US is ratcheting up military actions in Venezuela. They're going to call it a war on cartels, a crackdown on drugs, protecting homeland security. But the pattern's always the same: bombs and foreign entanglements to distract you from the Epstein files, while the repression creeps into our everyday life and they take over. So Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, is doing extrajudicial murders without any due process, just missiles and a press release. So they're going to deploy warships, submarines. They're going to talk about narco terrorists. But, the thing is, this is basically the same playbook we've been seeing since Margaret Thatcher in the Falklands. These are the little bullshit wars. Okay, Grenada, Nicaragua, Lebanon, because ultimately they're terrified of what's actually coming. People's health care is going to skyrocket. The Epstein files, and ultimately, it's like George Carlin said: America is an oil company with an army. Okay, so they've been eyeing the Venezuelan oil reserves for a very long time. And let's talk about this war on drugs. Because Hegseth is out bombing boats and declaring open season on narco terrorists, while Donald Trump just pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, a man convicted of conspiring to ship literally tons of cocaine into the United States. Okay? Hernandez, so let's just let that sink in for a second. So much of this immigration crisis is driven by US interventionist policies. We destabilize entire regions, we create the conditions for the crisis, and then, you break it, you bought it. And these people just want a chance to live. No one wants to leave their home country. We've been doing it since 1954. Guatemala, the CIA overthrew a democratically elected government for United Fruit. 1973, Operation Condor, with Chile, Argentina, Paraguay. A lot of blood on our hands for that. The 1980s, the more dirty wars: El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Uruguay. And let's talk about Venezuela, because right now they're ramping up pressure, talking about regime change, but this is nothing new. US sanctions were imposed by Obama in 2017. I'm sorry, by Obama in 2015, and then expanded under Trump in 2017 and 2019. They were explicitly designed to force regime change. Venezuela lost 99% of its export revenue. The GDP collapsed, health systems crumbled. And John Bolton, Marco Rubio have been talking about it out loud. So basically the punchline is: we engineer chaos after we turn an entire region into a pressure cooker for poverty and violence. And then we point the finger at the very people who our government is ruining their lives. And then we blame the survivors. We topple governments, wreck economies, arm dictators. And then when families flee the wreckage, Republicans call them invaders and criminals. Basically, this is a magic trick to shield the billionaires and corporations who profit from this destruction and scapegoat the refugees who are escaping it. And basically, it is a con. The crisis is empire. So when you're talking about narco terrorism, boat busting, immigration enforcement, let's not pretend it's about safety or morals. This is about This is about supremacy, it's about oil profits, and it's about shifting the blame. So I want to point your attention before we get into our program. I just want to point your attention to a joint action that Turn Left is doing. If we can pull up that graphic. This is a joint action. We're asking people to write letters to Congress demanding that they pass a war powers resolution to prevent another immoral, stupid, expensive war with Venezuela. And so please go to that, and then we're on to our first guest.
The government shutdown may be over, but the issue behind the 43-day stalemate hasn't gone away, making health care more affordable. The Senate will vote on the issue next month, and the Republican majorities in Congress are split on how to tackle the issue.
Republicans declaring a win with the end of the government shutdown, passing a budget deal that does not include the health care tax credits Democrats were holding out for.
We feel very relieved tonight. The Democrat shutdown is finally over.
That relief not necessarily shared by the 22 million Americans seeing their health insurance costs skyrocket.
People who are seeing their premiums go from $400 to $800, $800 to $1,400, people who will now have very difficult decisions to make.
Enhanced tax credits for premiums under the Affordable Care Act expire at the end of this year. Democrats want to extend these tax credits, which have been in place since 2021. According to analysis by the Kaiser Family Foundation, without these enhanced tax credits, an individual making $35,000 will go from paying about $1,000 per year for health care to paying more than $2,600 in 2026. A plan for a family of four in a household making $90,000 per year will rise by more than $3,700. President Trump has always wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, but neither Trump nor the GOP have reached a consensus on a comprehensive alternative.
So there you have it. It was the Democrats doing the shutdown, when basically they were just trying to, for a minute before they caved, trying to act as a stopgap because, spoiler alert, the GOP is trying to take away your healthcare subsidies, which is going to make your premiums skyrocket. It's going to make rural hospitals close, and it's going to be a disaster. But again, it's the Democrats' fault. So up is down, black is white. And we're going to bring on our first guest, who is an expert on the healthcare system. He actually wrote the book. He wrote the book called Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. He is one of the fiercest champions for Medicare for All. Abdul El-Sayed is a physician, an epidemiologist, and a public servant. He's also running for U.S. Senate in Michigan. He's endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders, and he is running on a working class platform, but he is here today in an individual capacity to talk about these Trump cuts and Medicare for All. Everybody welcome Abdul El-Sayed.
Jay, it's a privilege to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm grateful to be here to talk about one of the most important issues facing everyday Americans, in particular in Michigan, which is the crisis that is unfolding because of rising premiums and the risk that people face because of things like deductibles and out-of-pocket costs in the form of co-pays and co-insurance.
Yeah. And so this is a subject in which you are an expert. We met at a clutch with Bernie and AOC, and I just was really taken by your authenticity and commitment to this cause, which is apparent, which is why Senator Sanders has endorsed you. And what is your take on these ACA cuts?
I mean, devastating. You can imagine you're in a situation right now where you're facing the impossible situation where you're watching your premiums go up, possibly quadruple. And for a lot of families, that is going to price them out of health insurance. We live in a society where healthcare is way too expensive, and not being able to have health insurance means that if something catastrophic were to happen to you or your family, that would be all. You wouldn't be able to afford it. You potentially would have to go to an emergency room, not get the follow-up care you need, and still get hit by bills that'll put you into bankruptcy bankruptcy is wrong. It shouldn't happen in the richest, most powerful country in the world. And we could avoid it if we had the political will to do something about it. We wrote the book, my colleague, Dr. Micah Johnson, and I wrote this book because every time you talk about Medicare for all, a bunch of serious looking people who are profoundly unserious in their actual approach to governance will tell you, oh, this is not a serious idea. You can't possibly get it done. No, you can't get it done. It's just that we don't want to get it done because there's a lot of money to be made by corporations who sit on the other side of not getting it done.
Yep. And it seems that the GOP wants to make all these cuts, which is essentially what they do, because they seem to just hate poor people. But I mean, they don't seem to have a solution. They say this is radical, it's socialist. Is this completely a radical idea that comes out of nowhere? Spoiler alert, I did read your book, so I know that you do have some ideas on this. But is Medicare for all a crazy, radical new idea?
What's crazy is leaving people vulnerable in a moment when the prices of healthcare are so goddamn high. That's crazy. It's radical in the highest income, richest, most powerful country in the world to leave people adrift without the healthcare that they need and deserve, facing the risk of illness or catastrophe. That's radical. And you can see that because we're the only high income country in the world that does not guarantee health coverage to its people. Like, it's a pretty crazy thing. And they gaslight us into thinking that somehow this is normal because this is the experience that most of us have been stuck with our entire lives. It's not radical to think that we, in the richest, most powerful country in the world, could actually guarantee everybody healthcare, bring down our prices, and address the scourge of medical debt, which, by the way, is $225 billion. That is more than the GDP of half of the United States, half of the states in this country. So what is radical is continuing forward and thinking that somehow this is sustainable or that this is not affecting everyday people. What's radical is failing to act when there is a obvious approach that we could be taking here. And I'll tell you, more and more US senators are starting to get wise to this. We just saw a couple days ago that Chris Van Hollen, who's a leader out of Maryland, an incredible senator, been heroic fundamentally on the foreign policy front, signed on to the Medicare for All bill. Folks are realizing that this is the way that we have to solve our problems and that we all better get on to recognizing that right now there are too many people at risk, there are too many lives at stake, and we have to act.
Yeah, absolutely. So people hear about Medicare for all. They think, oh, well, what about having a public option as well? Some kind of hybrid. Just tell us a little bit about how does it work for people who don't really understand what Medicare for all is. How does it work? Why can other countries do this and not us? So we talk about being the greatest country in the world. And yet somehow every other industrial nation has figured out how to provide universal health care except for us. So, and I pay, I don't make a lot of money, and yet I am paying an exorbitant amount for the most basic coverage. And if I get sick, I have to pay more money. And then guess what? I still have to pay more money for my teeth and eyes, which apparently my teeth are fancy bones. They don't get covered because they're fancy. So what is Medicare for all fundamentally for people who don't really understand?
Well, we have Medicare, and Medicare is a government operated and funded health insurance program for seniors and people with certain disabilities. Now, Medicare has certain gaps, and what we're proposing under Medicare for All is that we would cover those gaps. We would make Medicare far more generous, and then we would extend it to everybody. If you like your private insurance through your employer or your union, you can keep it, but Medicare becomes a baseline, a default, a guarantee that is there for you your entire life, from the day that you're born to the day that you turn 26 to the day that you get a job, the day that you lose a job, the day you get married, the day you get divorced, the day you turn 65. It is there for you at baseline. It covers you for access to healthcare that you need and deserve, and it empowers you. And there's some really important aspects to the way that it works that help to address other secondary problems, not just that there are people who don't get the care, but that our healthcare is way too expensive and it's getting more expensive by the day. What Medicare for All would do is, because it would be the purchaser of the vast quantity of healthcare in this country, it operates what's called a monopsony, which is a fancy way of saying the opposite of a monopoly, which is when there's one seller of something. A monopsony is when there's one buyer of something. And if there's one buyer, they get to set the price, which means that Medicare can negotiate on our behalf and drop the prices of everything from prescription drugs to hospital stays to clinical visits, right? And then beyond that, it also addresses the games that are played between hospitals and healthcare systems and health insurers to increase the prices of care on us and to negotiate sweetheart deals between them that leave them consolidating our system and packing out both patients and providers. So Medicare for All does all of these things by operating one government health program for everyone that you can build off of if you want to, but that's a default for everybody. Now, this is not the same as a public option, right? A public option is just that. It's an option that is run by the government. That does not automatically cover everybody. It does not automatically create a monopsony that reduces prices. It does not create more efficiencies in the system. It's just one government option. And a lot of times what you hear for folks who talk about the public option, what you hear in between the lines is that they're more worried about getting hit by corporations and corporate spending against them because they are standing up against the ways that corporate health insurance have dominated our healthcare system for way too long.
Which
For
is, by
those
the
of us
way,
who,
one of the biggest lobbyists. They spend some of the most amount on lobbying both parties, which is
you're
crazy.
right.
And speaking to that point, we're also seeing the Democratic Party leadership, really strongly resist overwhelmingly working class policies and platforms. You saw how they resisted Mamdani's platform. You see how they're coming out to undermine Graham Plattner. So how do you see this affecting your campaign?
I'm the only person in my race who hasn't taken corporate money, and I'm also the only one running on Medicare for All. Those two things are not a coincidence. I'm just not afraid of their spending because I know that when you are armed with the truth and you are willing to full-throatedly advocate for it, that voters will take your back and they will have your back because they know that you have their best interest at heart. It's not my first time running in Michigan. I ran 8 years ago for governor, and I was saying the same things then as I'm saying now, that we need to guarantee healthcare in the richest, most powerful country in the world, that we need to get money out of politics, that we need to build an economy that isn't beholden to huge corporations, but that it empowers unions and small businesses to build high quality jobs. One job should be enough. And that's going to mean that all of these special interests, corporate interests, our local utilities, the health insurance corporations, the pharmaceutical corporations, APAC, are probably going to come for my throat. But at the same time, I am relying on everyday people who know I'm advocating for them to have my back. And I think we can win an election. And frankly, I'll just say this. If you cannot win an election saying what is right, I would rather not win an election and do things that are not consistent what I think people need and deserve. What is the point of the job if it's not the work?
Well, I think Mamdani proved this in New York. You can run on working class platform, working class issues, trying to make life affordable and livable for working class people. It doesn't have to be this way so that executives can have a new jet, right? So I know you have to go to your big rally with Senator Sanders tonight. Thank you for creating time for us. But any last words on why, anything you want to say to folks about why you're running, or your leadership in this time as we're facing one of the most polarized times in our lifetime, and what is your message to the people?
We need leaders right now who are willing to fight back, but also know what they're fighting for. I know exactly what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting it for an America where people can afford the basic dignities of their lives, in America where we come together to solve our problems rather than get torn apart, in America where you don't have to worry about where you're going to get healthcare, about whether or not your corporate job is going to offshore or automate, in America where you are not worried about a corporation getting better deals than you. And if you believe in that kind of America, I hope that folks will get involved and be a part of our race. You can go to abdulforsenate.com. You can follow me on all the socials. We're out there having the conversations that I think most of you listening wish politicians were having in communities like Michigan. This is the kind of race that is going to define where we go from here. Michigan is the crossroads of American politics, and these ideas can win, right? These ideas have won. And I think we need to show that they are the way forward for our country if we're serious about addressing the big challenges we face right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. There seems to be this idea in, Democratic consultant circles that the solution to Trump extremism is, well, we need to become more like them. If you can't beat them, join them. Let's move to the center, when really Trump has run and win, and MAGA has won on the most extreme possible sort of destructive populism. And I think we're proving, Mamdani and others are proving that, it's really about getting back to kitchen table, working class issues, getting the money out of politics. So thank you, Abdul. Thank you for your leadership. Want to wish you the best of luck, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Just passed Trump's big ugly bill, and it's going to gut Medicaid for Michiganders. And as a result of this bill, rural hospitals across Michigan are at way higher risk of closing. To explain just how devastating this is going to be for rural hospitals across Michigan, I want you to imagine that each of these juicy strawberries, Michigan strawberries, are in fact patients who bring insurance income to every hospital. 20% of patients in rural counties like this have their insurance via Medicaid. So what would happen if Medicaid all of a sudden went away? When I put strawberries in, each of these strawberries represents a single patient. So every month, let's say this hospital gets 5 strawberries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this one, because we've lost Medicaid, only gets 4. Now let's do it every month for 12 months. This is before the big ugly bill. This is after the big ugly bill. And we know what might happen to this hospital. Even when people don't have Medicaid, they still need health care, which means they're going to the emergency room, and you know who has to pay that cost? Everyone else. That's going to raise healthcare costs on you, even if you're not a Medicaid recipient. Michigan's home to 64 rural hospitals, and 20% of them are already at risk of closing. Medicaid being gutted is just going to make that worse. What that means is hospital closures. That means longer wait times, more expensive healthcare, and worse access to healthcare if you need it. People driving 2 hours, 4 hours in the case of a heart attack or a stroke. We need leadership that's willing to fight for more healthcare, not less. That's why I believe in Medicare for All, guaranteeing healthcare for every single person without premiums, copays, or deductibles. We can, in fact, do better. We must. People are counting on us.
So again, I definitely highly recommend reading Abdul El-Sayed's Medicare for All. And I want to tell you about another book. This is where we engage in some blatant and shameless self-promotion, because I also wrote a book. So if you are confused about what the hell is going on, how did we get to this place? I wrote a book called Be the Revolution: How Occupy Wall Street and the Bernie Sanders Movement Reshaped American Politics. It has been endorsed by Cornel West, Noam Chomsky. Mark Ruffalo said, "This accounting of events of the last 10 years is a profound and seismic piece of American political and cultural history that has gone all but unnoticed in the mainstream. Be the Revolution is not about a battle of right or left, but the fight for humanity and the natural world. The timing of this book could not be more right, nor the message more on point. Ken Burns should do a doc on it." And I may be biased, but I have to say I agree. And it is a history of the grassroots, a history of the political revolution and the progressive movement, but it also shows how we got to this moment, what enabled Donald Trump and fascism. And also it is a theory of change for organizing. So please get the book. Let's pull up the QR code to show people how. So you can go to betherevolution.us. There is a free sample chapter on that website. And it makes a great Christmas gift, whether you would like to help your more centrist friends to understand where we're coming from, or whether you're a veteran organizer, a new organizer, or you just want to see what the hell has been happening for the last 10 years. It is impossible to understand the world we live in without understanding the secret history of the grassroots of the last 10 years. So before I bring on our next guest, we're going to play a little clip from former White House advisor, Trump strategist, Steve Bannon, who has some feelings about the midterms.
And I will tell you right now, as God is my witness, if we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included.
Wow, from your lips to God's ears, Steve Bannon. Well, at the very least, he didn't do a Hitler salute again at that one. So I want to welcome my friend, who is a senior advisor and media consultant, Randy Jones.
How are we doing, Jay? Thanks for having me.
Yes, the horrors persist, but so do we. So you were press secretary to Andrew Yang. You've been in the media space for a long time. You're involved in a lot of these efforts. What do you think Steve Bannon is signaling here? Why do you think he's so concerned?
Yeah, Jay, I think Steve Bannon and folks like him are recognizing that the same rhetoric that got Donald Trump elected twice, the same rhetoric that put someone like Steve Bannon anywhere near the White House, is failing them today. I think we've seen in special elections in Florida, special election in Tennessee, the governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey, that the working class, the middle class, is no longer duped, is no longer enchanted by the messaging put forward by the MAGA minority in this country who unfortunately has been winning elections. And you can look to work from groups like ours, Turn Left, in the special election in Tennessee, where we produced an ad that simply said, Matt Van Epps wants to double the cost of your health care. Jay, it's always easier in politics if what you're saying is true, and we absolutely have truth on our side here through the big beautiful bill and in other legislation these folks have tried to push. They're literally trying to double the amount of money that the American people are going to spend on healthcare. And we've simply said, if you can't afford to pay double for your healthcare, then you can't afford Matt Van Epps. And I think that just literal reality, the financial burden, the affordability crisis that the American people are going through at the hands of the Trump administration is real. It's visceral. People feel it. And I think they're tired of it, Jay.
Yeah, and I personally am a little bit more pessimistic even than that, looking at some of Trump's Truth Social posts where he says they intend to denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility and deport any foreign national who is in public charge, a security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization. I don't know, but that sounds like some Nazi language to me. I know they claim that we throw that around very often, but we have Elon Musk throwing Hitler and Bannon throwing Hitler salutes at Republican events. We have young Republicans talking about Nazis in chats. And he says the goals will be pursued with the aim of achieving a major reduction in illegal disruptive population. So I don't know. To me, they're also floating balloons about Trump 2028, which is, I think, pretty crazy. But before we get into any of that, I want to just highlight some of the work that you were a part of with Stop the Camps. Our first broadcast was entirely about Stop the Camps, a campaign that started during the election year and then has continued to grow. Eventually, we're going to meet with Noelle Damico in this interview to talk more about that. But I just want to hear a little bit about the work that happened with Stop the Camps and warning people about basically the ICE internment camps.
Yeah. Yeah. Jay, we just talked a moment ago about the working class, the middle class, average Americans not buying the line of bullshit from these MAGA folks any longer. And I think what we've seen with ICE's operations, what we've seen the product of bills like the Lake and Riley Act, and Trump invoking the Alien Enemies Act, what that's meant is the rollback or the removal of due process within the United States. And I think that has been a bridge too far for people that bought the line that Donald Trump or MAGA politics would be better for them financially. Number one, I think that has proved wrong. I think the economy is not better for working folks. But two, I think that when maybe the threat to democracy line had failed folks like Kamala Harris, literally watching due process be removed from Americans or non-American citizens in this country has backfired against these folks. And I think it's a world in which most Americans never imagined that they would live, even though a lot of them voted for it.
Yep, that's true. Now the leopards are eating the faces. So let's go to the clip of the Turn Left ad that we put out that you were a big part of. I probably produced that ad. And we hate to say we told you so, but we kind of told you so. So this ad was going back to what? I think it was in 2024. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, great. Let's roll that clip.
In 1942, America invoked the Alien Enemies Act and imprisoned thousands of innocent people in camps like this. Sound familiar?
And I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Think of that. To hunt down, arrest, and deport every last illegal alien gang member until there is not a single one left in this country.
We've been here before. If you stay home, it happens again. Vote November 5th, paid for by Turn Left PAC.
Okay, there you have it. And so that has come true. We've learned that has come true. And we recently put out another ad.
Yes, that's right. Well, so we had run ads in the Florida special elections that we saw earlier this year, but just this week we had an ad running in the Tennessee special election that spoke directly to affordability.
Awesome. So let's go to the next Stop the Camps, which is kind of the update clip and really the goal here is to sound the alarm because a lot of people just aren't able to track every dumpster fire happening all the time. And this one is particularly horrifying because internment camps were a stain on our national memory in World War II. And this is also a huge cash grab for Trump donors, Geo Group, Core Civic, who are the private prison industrial complex. And, we Turn Left launched an entire campaign to help mobilize faith leaders against this. But let's go to that the updated clip.
We warned you that Trump's MAGA machine would bring internment camps to American soil. Now the camps are here. They're snatching people off the streets, locking them up with no charges, no trials, and alligator Alcatraz is just the beginning. This is America under Donald Trump, and it's spreading fast. Will the next camp be in your backyard? The warnings are over. The time to fight is now. Join Turn Left to stop the camps. Paid for by Turn Left PAC.
So why do you think this is important, Randy?
Jay, it's just what the end of the ad said. The warnings are over and the time to fight is now. And again, I think that the sleeping giant within us is awakening again. And, Jay, I think it's as simple as this. I think that people have a very positive view generally of their country. In our country, whether at times right or wrong, I think people love to love America. And I think when people turn on the TV screens, in a lot of cases like Charlotte, North Carolina, Chicago, Illinois, Washington, D.C., where I live, Los Angeles, California, when people walk outside of their door, they're viewing a country that they are not proud of.
Yeah.
And I think that when Donald Trump sold everybody a bag of lies about making America great again, I don't believe that this is what the American people had in mind. I don't think it's what they wanted. I don't think it's what they thought they were voting for in many cases, even though we tried to tell them. And, I think the message that folks like Turn Left need to be spreading now is that's all behind us. Perhaps that's water under the bridge in some way, because now is the time to fight. It doesn't matter if you voted for Donald Trump once, twice. It doesn't matter what's happened necessarily in the past. The reality is what it is today. And the battle ahead of us coming into these midterms, which is what Steve Bannon is so afraid of, I think will be a major decider in the future of a once great and hopefully great nation in the future.
Wow. Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think the main takeaway is that it really is just about, when he says make America great again, he's really meaning for white Christian men. He's signaling these policies are clearly, it's white supremacy, and they're not being subtle about it. And you're right, people are fighting back. It is not a partisan issue either. This is an American issue. This is fundamentally who we are, about our democracy, and not allowing a dictator to take over every single aspect of power. So, Randy, just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, Jay, I'll just say that I don't think that America is great again for white Christian farmers in Iowa. I don't think America is great again for white Christian factory workers in Detroit. I think that America is greater than it's ever been for the very few billionaires in this country who bankroll men like Donald Trump. And it is indeed time to take this country back from those folks. That is what Turn Left is here to do. I'm proud to do it. I'm proud to be with you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, Randy Jones, thank you for joining us, Randy.
Thank you, sir.
So before we bring up our next guest, I want to play some rather shocking footage that has happened. The good news is that there have been some really brave resistance happening across the country. We've been helping to support efforts for faith leaders mobilizing against these ICE detention facilities. And you may have seen this in the news, but we want to just highlight what the opposition is doing and the brave moral witnesses that are showing up to stand for our immigrant communities. So let's go to that clip. So that was a pastor named David Black in Chicago who was shot point blank with a pepper ball. Thankfully, most of the vigils that are happening are overwhelmingly peaceful and without incident. But we just wanted to show you that to highlight the extent to which this regime will go and the tactics that they will use against peaceful, prayerful resistance, exercising our First Amendment rights. But there have been some wonderful, wonderful efforts. As we were doing this work for Stop the Camps, we came across the most amazing people who are already mounting this resistance. And let's go to the clip to show a very different scene of what is happening in Florida.
On Wednesday, the contract between ICE and the Indiana Department of Correction will go into effect. That means the agreement will lead to undocumented immigrants being detained at the Miami Correctional Facility.
The Trump administration has dubbed the facility the Speedway Slammer. It sits about 70 miles north of Indianapolis with 1,000 beds made available for ICE detainees. CBS 4 State House reporter Hannah Adamson attended a vigil outside that facility today.
The Indiana Department of Correction says it anticipates less than 100 immigrants here illegally will be detained at the Miami Correctional Facility starting this week. Meanwhile, dozens of faith leaders outside the facility behind me are calling on state leaders to stop the plan in its tracks. Monday, Hoosiers from churches and multi-faith groups across the state held a silent prayer vigil on the outskirts of the Miami Correctional Facility.
Holy, healing, enabling Spirit be with you every step of your way.
All standing in solidarity for undocumented immigrants, calling on state leaders to oppose the use of prisons as ICE detention centers.
My brothers and sisters, we the faith leaders of Indiana have a moral duty to say no. You will not dehumanize anyone, for we are all created b'Tselem Elohim in the image of God.
This prayer vigil is both an act of compassion and a call for justice, a prophetic voice speaking truth in time of silence.
I wish the governor had not chosen to do this.
State Representative Ed Delaney says he toured the facility last week. He says he's concerned current staffing levels may not be able to handle the influx.
So you see a very different scene happening in Miami. And in this work, if you watched our first Stop the Camps broadcast, which was in August, we really delved into what the stakes were, the horrible conditions, and how this is really a stain on our national memory. But guess what? People are mobilizing. People are fighting back joyfully, prayerfully. And I want to bring on our next guest. Her name is Noelle Damico, and she has been doing some incredible work with some of the organizers in Florida. She is the director of social justice at the Workers Circle, and she also teaches at the NYU Wagner Graduate School of Public Service, and she has been organizing weekly vigils outside of Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center in the Everglades, together with Florida leaders of faith and conscience for more than 4 months. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Noelle Damico.
It's so good to be with you, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
And Noelle, thank you for that. I'm just blown away by the work that you have been doing. It was incredible to see that many of us got the same idea and we're doing similar work, and then we just came together. We've all been just trying to come together so that we can support this important frontline work. But I want to just, take a step back to let you tell people a little bit about the work you've been doing and tell the story.
Absolutely. So your listeners may be familiar with the cruelly named Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center that was built in 8 days on the Florida Everglades protected land. This happened at the end of June, beginning of July. And as this build was going on, Worker Circle, which is part of a range of national coalitions, including the Not Above the Law Coalition, have been talking about how can we get a public statement, a profound moral no going right where these detention centers are. And when we saw Alligator Alcatraz under construction, I'd been working with Florida leaders of faith and conscience for several decades on human rights issues. So I just picked up the phone and I started calling the clergy I knew. I reached out to people that I knew shared our values and knew that these faith leaders would become part of a core of resistance. So we started holding vigils outside of Alligator Alcatraz. And what's a little different about Alligator Alcatraz than some of the other detention centers is that, unlike other detention centers, there is not a register where the names of people being detained are placed. According to federal law and federal detention center policy, there is a database into which people being held for immigration issues go so that their lawyers and their family members can find them. Not so with Alligator Alcatraz. It's essentially a domestic U.S. black site. When you go in there, you're also then faced with well-documented, well-reported human rights abuses, including things like 30 people inside a cage with one toilet, including inability to shower regularly.
Maggots in the food, I've heard.
Yes, food that's gone bad and maggots, but also lack of medical care when needed. One of the family members we know whose loved one was detained was close to diabetic shock, and that's how they got out of Alligator Alcatraz and over, joy of joy, to Crome Detention Center in Miami. But what's happening right now inside that detention center and inside so many of these detention centers is not only shameful and immoral, we're saying it's un-American. This is not the kind of operation that we should be holding up in a nation that is committed to democracy, committed to free speech, committed to welcoming immigrants. Now, we know we've got a checkered past here in the United States on that. We obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. But what's happening by and large with these ICE operations is that people are being swept off the streets from their workplaces, from their houses of worship, from schools, from hospitals. These are people that are being swept up, even people with work authorization, people who had student visas who were summarily canceled, or work visas, but it didn't matter. They're picked up, they're detained. They're then often pressured to self-deport, or if not deported, either to the home country from which they originally came, or sometimes to a third country where they have no connection whatsoever.
So I want to just highlight that this is, as you said, it is un-American and it is happening everywhere. So it's not just happening in Florida.
That's
How
right.
pervasive is this?
Well, it's extremely pervasive. For example, you just showed the video from Miami, Indiana with Speedway Slammer, which the federal government referred to as the next alligator Alcatraz. So they took this state-run facility, and by the way, states aren't supposed to be detaining people for immigration. That's the federal government's job. So there's a whole suit around that at Alligator Alcatraz. But meanwhile, these other detention centers that are copycats, that the Alligator Alcatraz camp was a blueprint for, are being created and people are being put inside. But it's not just this, it's all across the country. People are being taken when they show up at ICE court to renew and say, hey, here I am. It's not like the federal government didn't know where most of these people are. They're targeting the people who are following the process that the federal government gave to them to follow, who have been living and working and contributing to our communities. So where are these detention centers? They are all across the country. And there's a wonderful organization called Detention Watch Network, and they have mapped where these federal detention centers are, and you can go out to Detention Watch Network's website and take a look at some of them. These ICE courts are everywhere as well, and these again are the courts where people come on a regular basis, usually once a year, to check in with the federal government, to show that they have work authorization, and that's where the Trump administration is grabbing them and then putting them in detention.
And so that kind of blows up the narrative that it's about the law and they should follow the law, because they're trying to follow the law. They're trying to do the right thing.
That's exactly
and then
right.
they're punishing them for that. So I think we can abandon that.
That's
I think it's also worth noting that this is a huge cash grab for companies like CoreCivic and Geo Group, the private prison industrial complex, who are big Trump administration donors. And they're just trying to, flip these facilities really quickly.
Absolutely.
They're trying to franchise them because it's a giant cash grab. So these are happening everywhere. They're happening in New Jersey. They're happening in Michigan, Texas,
They're happening in
Oklahoma,
Louisiana,
California.
Yeah.
And so luckily, folks like you are mounting a resistance everywhere. There was just a big mobilization, I think, that happened.
Yes. November 1st and 2nd. Yes.
Called Invisible in America.
Disappeared in America, actually, because these are people that are being disappeared from work, disappeared from our communities, disappeared from our neighborhoods. This is why we're using the word disappeared also, because in Alligator Alcatraz, you actually can't track people. Miami Herald has put out a very important report saying, hey, look, there are 800 people that were in Alligator Alcatraz and they've just gone off the grid. But you're right, resistance is happening everywhere. And on the weekend of action that was called Disappeared in America, we mounted over 150 events nationwide. Some of these were protests outside of Home Depots. Some of these were Day of the Dead memorials, and some of them were vigils outside of detention centers, ICE courts, and other sensitive locations. And what we're in the process of doing right now, because it was such a successful day that mobilized so many thousands of people, is saying, okay, you did it once. How do you do it over time? How do you make this regular? And so what I want your listeners to know is we have training resources. If you're hearing about this and you're saying, what can I do in my own community? You can absolutely join in. We are happy to connect you with others. And it may be that right in your community, something is already afoot. That's the other thing. It's not like we know every vigil that's going on across the country. Would never presume to do that. These are really, even those that are connected with us, very locally led and locally driven. And that's exactly as they should be, because what these vigils do, first of all, is tell the people who are being detained, you are not alone. We are standing with you and we are prepared to fight this together. The second thing that they do is introduce people in the community to one another. Faith leaders meet union leaders, college students meet veterans, people who have never protested in their life, friends. They will come to a vigil because that's a mode of kind of contemplation and protest at the same time that appeals to a very broad range of people. So what we're about right now is taking that wonderful weekend of action, which put thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the streets, and taking that and turning that into something regular by supporting those organizations with some of the best practices. We've been out there in front of Alligator Alcatraz since August the 3rd, every single week. I just told a newspaper reporter the other day, I said, you know, we're coming up now on week 19 of 52 weeks of prayer and protest.
Let's go back a tick and just very briefly tell people, what is a freedom vigil and why is this a good tactic?
Yeah. Well, the Freedom Vigil is essentially a vigil where you go and you're present and you invite prayer and testimony. You may sing some songs, you may read some poems. If you are connected to family members who have loved ones inside, you make a space for them to share their experience if they want. We have to take, first of all, care, because many of these families are mixed status families. Many of them are afraid that their loved ones inside will be retaliated against. So again, never pressure any family members to share, but if they are willing, absolutely make a place for them. So vigils are simply a space to come together with intentionality. It's a place that you can invite the press to demonstrate that we are not standing idly by. We are in opposition to these Trump administration operations that are harming our neighbors, our family members, and our friends. And so they don't have to, it doesn't have to be a complicated affair. Some people have even had silent vigils, right? Stood out there with some candles. So they're easy to put together. And then why do a vigil? Because first of all, again, it communicates to the people who are being detained, to their loved ones, and to immigrant communities and others who are under threat right now. It tells them, you may not be able to be out here with us, but we know this is going on. It's wrong, and we're not going to stop talking about it and showing up to say we are against this. And so that piece of it, I cannot tell you how important it is. I get WhatsApp messages, signal messages, phone calls day and night from communities that are saying, thank you for being out there. And this is what you can do in your own community, because honestly, this is not a local issue. It's a national issue. And indeed, it's also an international issue, because some of the harm that's being done actually rises to the level of abrogation of international law in some of these facilities. So how do you get started and start going from having a gathering once to having a gathering several times? You want to build a group of people and assess, okay, can we hold this once a week? Or maybe we hold it once every 2 weeks. Or maybe like the folks out at Speedway Slammer, we're going to do it once a month. You figure out what's going to be that interval that you can currently sustain. You don't want to start something, do it for 2 weeks, and then it dissipates, right? So you want to bring enough people in so that you can share leadership, so that it's a big tent, so that it's not just everybody from one congregation, right? It's from a panoply of congregations.
And it's not just one faith either. It's all sorts of faith leaders.
All sorts
There
of
are
faith.
indigenous leaders. There are
Exactly.
veterans. There's all walks of life showing up in
That's right.
solidarity. And I think
That's
what's
right.
important about it is that it is demonstrating they like to claim that they have somehow the moral high ground, and they like to flaunt their religion and their Christianity when this is in direct opposition
It's
to
in direct opposition.
to their faith. And I think faith leaders showing up, showing moral courage, being moral witnesses, and saying we're here in solidarity and this is what we are. This is who we are, is a very, very important demonstration. And I think your point that it needs to be sustained, not just a one-off. This is something we need to keep doing over and over and over again. And before we leave, where can people go to find these resources and to follow your work?
Absolutely. Just go to Freedom Vigils with an S, freedomvigil.org, and you'll be redirected to a page that's hanging off the Worker Circle page. At some point when we have a spare moment, we're going to spin it off into a microsite. But if you go to freedomvigils.org, you'll be able to see some of what's gone on at Alligator Alcatraz. You'll see the press there. You'll see some of the groups involved, some of the concerns. You'll be able to hook up with other vigils that have chosen to list with freedomvigils.org. That list is going to be expanding as we get more and more people connecting with one another. The point here is to grow this and to share our experiences with one another and to remain united as we oppose these horrendous operations that are doing such terrible harm.
Well, thank you so much for all your work, Noelle. It has been such a pleasure to know you and to get to see your work and to connect with this sacred community. Honestly, this is the medicine that I need when confronted with all these horrors, getting together in real life and online with other people to show that we will not be moved. This to me represents the best of who we are. And I'm just so grateful for you to join us and for this work you're doing. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks again. And the last thing I want to say is it's always the work of many hands. So I want to give a big shout out to the hundreds upon hundreds of people and organizations that are making these ongoing vigils possible. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's listening. You cared enough to tune in. Step up. We want you in this work. We'll make place for you in this work. Your creativity, your ingenuity, your imagination, your courage, your intelligence, it's all needed now. This is our time. Please, please think about starting a vigil. Thank you.
Thank you. Powerful stuff. And okay, great.
All right, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
I gotta
Noelle.
jump for my actual call now. Okay.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Bye.
Such powerful work. People are standing up all over this country, standing up joyfully, prayerfully, to resist fascism, to resist ICE being mobilized in cities across the country, resist these immoral camps. And we just want to take a minute to thank our partners. We do not have billionaire donors. We do not have corporate donors. We do this with grassroots support, individual donations, and we couldn't do it without you or our partners that we have been working with in solidarity. So we just want to take a minute to thank our partners, the people who have been in this work. Of course, this is not everyone, but some of the people who we have been in coalition with, the Center for Popular Democracy, Faith in Democracy, Faithful America, Vote Common Good, Leaving MAGA, Decleptocracy Alliance. And these are faith leaders. These are people who fight corruption. And I also want to highlight one upcoming action. So please, if you want to keep supporting our work, click the QR code, get out your phones. But I also want to raise some attention that Vote Common Good is leading, one of our coalition partners that we are participating in, which is a joint action. So if we want to pull that up right now. Basically, we are asking people to write letters to the White House Faith Office to condemn Trump's treatment of migrants and actually Vote Common Good. Doug Padgett, Pastor Doug Padgett, who was on our last Stop the Camps broadcast, is leading an action where we are going to actually print over 100,000 letters. There's still time to write more. They're going to print them out and deliver them in probably 30 or 40 boxes to the White House Faith Office in person to demand an end to these immoral camps. So please sign up, follow us for more information on that and other resistance efforts happening across the country. And lastly, we want to thank our broadcast partners, We and Goliath. I want to thank our broadcast tech, Mike Koch, who is making it happen behind the scenes. He is with the We and Goliath team. They have been such incredible partners in helping to produce these broadcasts. So we are very grateful for their work, and they are in it for the right reasons, just like all of us. So thank you for joining us. We want to thank Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, Randy Jones, Noelle Damico for joining us. And thank you yourself for caring, because this work only happens when all of us rise together. All of us rise to defend our democracy, defend our republic, and stand up for what's right. And I got to tell you, that is the best medicine. So if you are feeling scared, afraid, alone, terrified, you're not wrong. But the best medicine is hopefully to get out from behind the keyboard and get in with other people who are doing this powerful work. So thank you. This has been another Turn Left live stream. Thank you for joining us.